Live from the Morongo Casino Studios, it's the Heidi and Frank Show on 95.5 KLOS and KLOS HD1.
Los Angeles.
Heidi and Frank Show a little after 9 a.m. on a Monday. You know that means Christian Hand is with us. Hello, Christian.
Hi, I'm a little low energy because I'm just recovering from a pulmonary tract infection that I have.
Oh, I know. Huh?
It's very difficult. So it appears that some other guy that does radio had a dude from a band come on and did some vocals of a famous song, which is groundbreaking broadcasting 5 years after some of us have, drilled through that. There's a band called Nirvana. I don't know if you guys are aware of them. A couple small records. They're indie. They're an indie band out of Seattle. I think they're going to go places. 30 million records sold worldwide of an album called Nevermind, originally called Sheep. And here's what's cool about this. Is that they had a record called Bleach that they did with Butch Vig. Butch Vig goes on to be the drummer for Garbage and do all the Foo Fighters records, very big producer. So what we have here is kind of cool, is we have the original Butch Vig mix of Smells Like Teen Spirit, but then they went and had a guy named Andy Wallace mix it for the radio, and Andy was picked because he had done Slayer's record that Kurt Cobain was a huge fan of. So what's interesting is to try and work out if you think that the Butch Vig mix would have been as big a hit as the Andy Wallace mix, and it wouldn't. So here's the Butch Vig mix of Smells Like Teen Spirit. Oh. Wait for Kurt to sing. Load up on guns, bring your friends from the news to pretend she's overboard, self-assured, no, it's dirty world. All right, so that's that version, and then here's the Andy Wallace mix. He's very good. Enormous. I do not think that the original Butch Vig mix would have been as big a hit because it wouldn't have come out of the speakers as loud. It's crazy. Let's go to the chorus so you can hear how just enormous it is. That's a hit record, folks. So if it wasn't for Andy Wallace, it's quite possible that we wouldn't have had Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit as a hit. It just goes to show you the millions of ways that you could fail with a record. The record label actually thought that the entire album, if they sold 50,000 copies of it, they thought it was going to be a hit. Because that's how many records Sonic Youth had sold of their previous record. And they were like, all right, if we match... So that's how inept the record companies are, is that they heard this song and were like, oh, yeah, no, it's going to sell 50,000 copies. At its peak, it was selling 200,000 copies a week. On drums, this guy. Now you hear that? Bing, bing, That head ring that's happening consistently through the whole thing is one of Dave Grohl's biggest complaints about this, which is that Andy Wallace did Sound Replacer, which is where you have a sample of a snare drum or bass drum or toms that are playing as the drums are being triggered, so that it gives you a more consistent and huger sound, but it's not as cred as it would have been. And one of the complaints from the band was that it's closer to a Motley Crue record than a Nirvana record, which I don't think is true. But you can hear Dave was not fond of the fact that there was sound replacement on the drums. It's a great beat, though. Great fill. He's very talented. He's a very talented young man. All right, you got it. Have some of that. And then on bass, Christ Novoselic, who dismissed the riff and the melody on the song as ridiculous and was not a huge fan of it when they first played it. And I would imagine probably not a big fan of it after the fact, because it sort of changes your life in a way that you can never go back. You can never go back, man. But this bass tone. Power cables. Dave. Now that it's out of our, like we don't hear it every single day on the radio, you realize that this is just a ludicrous, ludicrous song. All right, the guitars. One of the things that Butch Vig is very, very good at is guitar tones, and the guitars on this thing are shreddy. Now, there's a band called the Pixies, who are a foundationally important alternative act in America. And Kurt Cobain was an enormous Pixies fan, and the Pixies invented this thing called Loud, Quiet, Loud, which is where the chorus is loud, the verses are quiet, and the chorus is loud. So basically, Kurt said that at the beginning of making this record, he wanted to make the best Pixies record that had ever been made. And when you sort of like shoot Nirvana through the prism, especially this record of the Pixies, it makes so much sense. So when you get this huge blistering chorus, massive intro, and then it sucks down to these little tiny verses that just and the bass and the drums, it's him completely cribbing from the Pixies. So we start with one of the greatest riffs in rock and roll. Totally ripped off from The Offspring. It isn't. That's a joke, because The Offspring ripped it off for Pretty Fly for a White Guy, because they turned it and then they made the thing. So that's how that worked. Pearls Before the Swine. Machine Guns. So good. Add the bass. To the quiet bit. This section, there's actually in the verses to the choruses, there's another guitar which is doing this. Before we get to the lead, we're just going to let the two guitars come together for this. I love guitars. So much clicking tone. And then together, wall of guitar. Without that second one? Nope. So we have the lead here, which is every cover band in the Southland is about to realize they've been playing this wrong. Bonkers, and then underneath it is this. Back to the quiet bit. I'll show you how they build it. Ridiculous. I mean, were you in radio when this came out?
Yep.
Yep,
So
yep,
you
yep.
remember what it did when you first heard it? I was in college radio, and we had a pretty powerful radio station, so we would get all of the stuff first. And I was the technical director, and then I was one of the program directors for one of the channels. Hello, and I remember getting the cassette, like opening this envelope, and the cassette fell out. And it was a single back in the days of the single, and then it had like the black T-shirt with the yellow squiggly smiley face guy. I remember getting it and being like, oh, yeah, this is that band that put out that Bleach record, which I hated. And I was like, I'll listen to this later. So I just put it in my bag, and I took it up to my dorm room, and I was an RA. Goes to show you how my school ran. The idiots were running the asylum. So I was an RA, and I had this massive stereo system in my room, of course, and a drum set. I broke every rule that I was supposed to be upholding. And I remember putting the cassette in and pressing play and hearing that riff, and just like my brain having a huge amount of difficulty working out just how significant what I was hearing was. And I remember listening to the song all the way through. The cassette went turned off, and I was sitting there in silence. And then I went and got like 10 of my friends that were lived on my hallway, and they still talk about it when we bring it up. That they were like, "Yeah," I pulled them into my room, and I was like, I think
Listen to this.
I was like, literally, like, I think everything's about to change.
Whoa.
Because you have to understand, like, in college radio at that time, like, it was alternative before it became alternative. So we were still the underground. It was still music that the average person didn't know, because in 1991, if you go back and look at the charts, it's all the hair bands.
Right.
Like, all the hair bands, Poison and those guys are still, we're into, like, the photocopier's been running on hair bands for 4 iterations, and we're into, like, the final iteration. And this thing came out, and Sebastian Bach, I think, said that the moment that he knew he was dead, like his career was done, was when he went into the lobby of the record label, which I think was Atlantic, and what used to be like a big Skid Row banner above the front desk was Alice in Chains. And he was like, we were done, and nobody talked to us ever again. So this, like, people have this, like, don't quite understand
Now
it.
I only see him at bowling tournaments.
And he's a lovely chap and a great
Wonderful
bowler,
guy.
I might add.
Absolutely.
But I remember it was one of my worst radio interviews. It was when he was doing the Broadway musical, and he refused to talk about Skid Row. He only wanted to talk about the Broadway musical, and I was like, well, nobody really cares about the Broadway musical, champ. I got to be honest with you. But nobody. I mean, if you weren't in music at that time or in college radio or anything, the Death Star effect of this song on the industry and on an entire genre of music is not to be understated. It's quite. I don't know if it's been done prior since the Beatles, that somebody came out and just changed everything. Yeah. And of course, the lead singer Kurt Cobain passed away in 1994. That's one of those moments when anyone who was around at that time remembers where they were when they heard the news. And the reason it's called Smells Like Teen Spirit is that there was a chick named, she hated that I called her chick, a woman named Kathleen Hanna, who ended up marrying Ad Rock of the Beastie Boys. And she was friends with them, and she had written on Kurt Cobain's bedroom wall, "Kurt smells like Teen Spirit," because Teen Spirit was that deodorant that they had at the time. So that was why it became Smells Like Teen Spirit, because the lyric is never mentioned in the entire song, because they thought it was just a throwaway. And originally, Kurt had the band play the song for like an hour and a half, and it was much faster. And then Christ Novoselic said, let's slow it down and see what happens. And the minute that they slowed it down, it became this massive, massive anthem. So with no further ado, try to sing along. It will break your vocal. Kurt Cobain, Smells Like Teen Spirit. Epic.
Load up on guns, bring your friends. It's fun to lose and to pretend she's overboard and self-assured. I know, a dirty word. Hello, 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 hello. Here we are now, entertainers. I feel stupid and contagious. Here we are now, entertainers. I'm a lotto, I'm a albino, I'm a mosquito, my libido, yeah. Hey, yeah. I'm worse at what I do best, and for this gift I feel blessed. A little group has always been, always will until the end. Hello, 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 hello. With the lights out, it's a dangerous. Here we are now, entertain us. I feel stupid and contagious. Here we are now, entertain us. I'm a lotto, I'm a albino, I'm a mosquito, my libido, yay! Hey, yay! And I forget just what it is, so yeah, I guess it makes me smile. I found it hard, was hard to find, well, whatever, never mind. Hello, 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 hello. With the lights out, it's dangerous. Here we are now, entertain us. I feel stupid and contagious. Here we are now, entertain us. I'm a lotto, and a rhino, I'm a mosquito, my libido, I deny you, 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 I deny you.
Greatest Pixie song the Pixies never made. And by the way, that's vocal take 2 of 3. He did 3 takes, and that's the second one. And like, I try to sing that chorus. It is no surprise that the poor guy was suffering so greatly with all of the things that come with doing that to yourself. So, Smells Like Teen Spirit. If you haven't, like, just go back and listen to Nevermind. You're like, oh, it's a greatest hits collection. It's absolutely bonkers how good that record is. And you can actually get I forget what the other mixes are called, but the Butch Vig mixes are available. You can find them on iTunes and on Spotify. So if you want to hear the record,
what is that big difference there? I mean, because when you played that Butch mix.
Yes.
At first, I'm like, well, wait, that sounds similar. But then when you played the real version, I was like, oh, wait, no, it's completely different.
Completely different. Well, the big thing is that Andy sound replaced the drums. So if you listen to the drums, they're more organic sounding. If you listen to the Andy mix,
but way better.
and then the guitars are way bigger. And the vocal is further buried in. This is a much more indie, because if they were going for the Pixies record, this is what a Pixies record would have sounded like. It's not as bright. And nerdy radio stuff, if you think about the compression chain of a radio station and how much we beat signal up, with the Butch Vig mix would have just sort of almost got smaller by being compressed that much, whereas the Andy mix is mixed to the radio and it just explodes and gets bigger. And if you remember, like, what that sounded like against everything else that you put on the air at that point, it was just like 10 dB louder without being even louder. It was crazy.
Yes, right.
So the record label is actually right, and everyone talks about how the band didn't want it to be hit and blah 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 blah. That is a load of garbage, because there's no way that they would have picked Andy Wallace from doing the Slayer record to do these mixes to make it bigger if they hadn't wanted it to be a huge hit, and thusly it was, and things were not the same. I will be back this afternoon at 4 with Sluggo and Kevin. We're going to do In Bloom from Nirvana there, so join us for that, and a personal invitation to Howard Stern that if he wants me to come on his radio show and show him how to do the segment correctly, Philly, I will gladly come any day of the week. All you got to do is call me, Hank, and I will be there. I'll see you on the air. So I'll be back here this afternoon at 4 with those guys, and then I'll be back next week with you lot. Thanks for having me in, and be safe, everybody.
That was great.
Thank you, Christian. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Keep it right here. We're Heidi and Frank.